You're on it.
Technology.
We'll call to order at 3 o'clock. Adoption of the agenda. Has administration got any changes or deletions? Board?
I'll make the motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Next is adoption of the minutes of the November 20th, 24 meeting. Has anybody seen any issues with that?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented for November 20th.
I'll call the question. Everybody in favor? That's passed. Next, we go to development permit application 15060-2024.
That's me. Okay, so the applicants are here in attendance. They own, and the landowners have a 12.6 acre parcel with a legal description of Southwest 3261-7, west of the 5th. Block 1, Block 1, Plan 2020653. The application is for a lodging establishment minor. The applicant has an existing Airbnb and outfitters to rent to new tourists to the area. The applicant is seeking compliance with our current land use bylaw with approval from the MPC. It is currently zoned A2, Agriculture 2, and a lodging establishment minor is a discretionary use and requires the MPC approval. It was referred to two internal departments, our infrastructure and economic development. And Bert's comments, he aligned it with some of the province stuff, our strategic plans and economic development, tourism pillars. You can see those links there. And infrastructure is not aware of any issues and has no concerns with the application. It was advertised as a discretionary use in local newspapers, and letters were sent to adjacent landowners that were contacted because there was no letters sent because of the postal strike, but they were all contacted, and one letter of concern was received to date. It is my recommendation to the Municipal Planning Commission that the development permit 15060-2024 for a lodging establishment minor approve that permit 060-2024 with the following conditions. And would you like me to read those?
No, I've read through.
No, thank you.
Okay. Do the landowners have anything to say? They want to speak?
I'm not sure if are we responding to the letter or are we responding to?
The letter, the person who wrote the letter of concern is also in attendance?
Yeah, no, they'll be next.
Okay.
I think he goes first.
I'm fine with going first if they'd like to go afterwards.
Okay.
So we can move on.
Yeah. Easy.
Varying heights of chairs here. They're adjustable. It's like the old interview trick, give the guy the low chair.
You have the floor.
Ready to proceed. Thank you very much. First off, I'd like to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak to this matter. And in respect of the Commission's time, I'll be as brief as possible. You have my written submissions. And I also trust you have the addendum that was also provided. Thank you very much. First off, I'd like to start off with, and I didn't have this in my notes, but I'd like to start off with there's no personal issue here.
Before you start, maybe introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Tom Seward, and I own the property directly next to the applicant property. Okay, yeah, I'm here just to speak to, my property, the value of the property, and the protection of the intended use of my property. And, I respect, what the Ellens are doing and what Ellens, the property that they have. However, I need to say my piece to protect my interests in what I have. So, again, thank you for the opportunity. So I'll be brief and then I'll answer any questions that the commission may have. So, as stated, I own property directly across from the application property, which to the best of my understanding is operated as a short-term rental for approximately 3 years. I purchased my property about 8 years ago, and the intent of that was to enjoy the peacefulness of the country and also escape from the populated areas. I currently live in Edmonton, and I can't wait to get out of there. So, I've invested a significant financial and personal effort into my property and spend much time there, and in a couple of years, knock on wood, plan to start making plans to retire out there. To my knowledge, the subject property has not been used as a residence and has been strictly used for the commercial purpose of operating the short-term rental business. And I'm sure you all know this, but I'll throw it out there. Short-term rentals essentially advertise on the internet for lodging, temporary lodging to unknown individuals. And also, as contained in my written submission, the Alberta courts have ruled operating a short-term rental is the same as operating a hotel. I think probably everyone's aware Airbnb is often in the news and things like that, and the government and the courts have taken certain steps recently to identify these as businesses, and as stated, the courts have ruled them. Operating a short-term rental, in the court's opinion, is the same as operating a hotel. Also, the Revenue Canada has just recently indicated that any property that a short-term rental or any property used as a short-term rental is also subject to a 13% tax upon sale of the property. So they deem the property itself to be a business as well. So if that property is sold, Revenue Canada imposes a 13% tax on that property as it's considered a business. And I believe that just occurred earlier in the spring. The operation of the short-term rental essentially has negatively affected the enjoyment and security of my property in the following ways. There's been an instance that I'm aware of trespassing. There's been firearm use at the property, reckless ATV use, loose dogs, and noise. And I can expand on those if you like right now, or I can wait until the end if you have questions on any of those. The presence of the short-term rental has also negatively affected the value of my property, as supported in the letter from the real estate professional that I provided in my addendum for the reasons outlined in that letter. It's in my opinion, and I may be biased, but it is in my opinion, but I believe also, as indicated by the real estate professional, and likely many others, that on the subject of the value of my property and the interest in my property, at some point I'm going to sell, right? I'm not going to live forever, or, I can have only so many good years out there, and then I have to look at other types of living arrangements after retirement. And the presence of a short-term rental directly next to my property, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the real estate agent, would reduce the value of my property in the manner that if someone is looking for country living in an area, if they're looking to get away, knowing that a short-term rental is directly across, and the nature of short-term rentals with inviting unknown individuals into the community and the things that may come with that, would likely direct that buyer's, potential buyer's interest in a different property that does not have a short-term rental directly next to it, or allow that person to provide, a lowball bid. So essentially, the presence of it would, dissuade anyone possibly from purchasing it, or if they did, my ability to get full market value of it would be reduced. And kind of sad to say, because buying this has kind of, been a dream of mine, getting away from the city, always kind of country at heart and things like that. And it is really sad for me to say, had I known this would have occurred, or that this situation that is right now is occurring, I likely wouldn't have bought it. I know I wouldn't have bought the property. I would have looked for something else had I known that this was going on, because this was not the purpose of me purchasing a property. And I'm not saying everybody is bad that comes there and things like that, but it's unknown, certainly, and also just not the intent of my, significant financial investment in the property. I'm not a wealthy person. I work hard for a living, like I'm sure everyone in the room does. And, so having this there was certainly not my intention, to finding a nice country, bush quarter section, free from the nuisances or the activities of city life or a highly populated area. Now, well, as I'm sure everyone will enjoy, we'll get to a little bit more of the technical part about the nature of the land use bylaw that's been applied for, which is lodging establishment minor, and I won't waste your time because I'm sure you all understand it fully, or aware of its contents fully. However, as pointed out in my documentation here today, there is no mention in the minor lodging establishment bylaw of temporary accommodation or temporary stay. Short-term rentals are essentially that, an accommodation for a short-term stay. And what I find interesting is in the other two bylaws regarding lodging establishments, the major and the secondary, they do mention short-term stay. The intended purpose of those is for short-term stay. So I would suggest it's not a mistake that it's not contained in the minor land use bylaw, and there's a purpose that it doesn't list temporary or short-term accommodation in the lodging establishment minor bylaw. What that intent is, I don't know. The original drafters would likely have known that, but I do find it very interesting that the other two bylaws regarding this do have short-term or do have temporary stay or accommodation, and the bylaw that this has been applied under does not. So again, in my opinion, and in a plain reading of this, I would suggest that bylaw is not applicable to this application, because certainly a short-term rental is for short-term accommodations. Now, knowing, and because I'm a bit of a legislation nerd, I like reading bylaws and legislation, and knowing that the Planning Commission does have the authority, and the Development Authority does have the ability to vary from a bylaw. You can't fit everything in. However, in varying for a bylaw, and in my understanding as well, approving anything, and this is actually also in the condition that was put in this application by the Development Authority, should it be approved, the condition. So in varying a bylaw or approving, for the purpose of approving an application or, approving a land use, the Commission and the Development Authority, and where do I have it here? Can approve or vary the bylaw if it does not interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring properties. So, and as I noted, this is also listed in the application package that was posted with the agenda that, should this be approved or put forward by the Development Authority, that is a condition of it. But I'm here to present that, that indeed it would affect my intended enjoyment and use of my property and the value of my property should this be approved. In closing, I submit the following. The operation of the short-term rental should be considered strictly a commercial development. As indicated, it is not used as a residence, so it is not a secondary use of residence, which many business-related approvals are granted because it's secondary. So home occupation, things like that, it's secondary to the use of the applicant or the owner's residence. This is not being used as a resident. It is strictly being used for the purpose of the short-term rental. So I suggest, or I put forward, that it be considered a commercial business and not a secondary use of a residence. And as a commercial development, in reading the land use bylaws and also the development plan, there seems to be a continued intent to keep strictly commercial businesses in commercial appropriate areas. So again, if you look at this as the Alberta courts do, if you look at this as a hotel and a business as Revenue Canada and many other municipalities have rather strict bylaws and business licensing requirements for short-term rentals. If you look at this as a commercial property, which I'm suggesting it is, and in my opinion it is, being used for strictly commercial purposes, it's not appropriate in this area. It would be more appropriate, a highway corridor or, strictly commercial type area or within a hamlet or something along those lines because of the nature of it being strictly commercial. And also I submit that I've provided in my objection, both written and oral here today, significant evidence of the interference with the enjoyment and value of my property and with the past, that it has interfered with the enjoyment and value of my property in the past and also moving forward in the future if the operation continues. I trust that after taking my objection into consideration, the Commission has been provided with the required due diligence to outright reject this application. And if in the opinion of the Commission, I have not provided significant evidence or sufficient evidence of the interference or enjoyment and value of my property, I ask the Commission to provide the required threshold or burden of what that evidence may be needed, and so that I have an opportunity to collect that evidence and demonstrate it. And if required, if that is required, I would ask for an extension of this process until such time as I could collect that evidence and present. Thank you very much. Any questions for me? Yes.
Thank you. I did take a lot of time and go through your letter
I apologize.
and looking up and so, no, I mean, and I understand your passion for the situation. So one of the questions that I was wondering is when you had mentioned the trespassing, excessive firearm use, ATV use, the noise, loose dogs, how many reports have you made to bylaw officers already?
I was in contact with, and I can't remember the individual's name, but I was in contact with someone with the Development Authority, and any of the councillors here would have likely received an email that I sent out about my concern about short-term rentals. So in that email, I did provide, the concerns with short-term rentals, and then also in speaking with the individual from the Development Authority, I did communicate what the concern was, and what was occurring.
Okay, just because basically what I'm getting at there, like things like trespassing, firearm use, ATV use, noise, and loose dogs, regardless of where someone lives in the municipality, those are all things that we would have to call a bylaw officer and make a complaint about, regardless of who our neighbors are. So that was one concern. Then something else that I was wondering about with it, for example, like here at this table, we're bound to the Municipal Government Act, and we're bound, of course, by our own bylaw. So whatever is relevant to CRA, to any of these other government jurisdictions, is outside of our control to make a decision at. And Peter, correct me if I'm, or Josh, if I'm wrong on that. So for us to, we basically have to look past all of that information and focus on what's in our bylaw. And like you had mentioned, when it comes to, the use of your property and noise and so on, like, and I live in the county, of course, on a country residential as well. So I guess first I would have a question for Peter, through the chair to administration, is when it comes to a section, or to Josh, for example, I'm looking at these 3 sections on my map that are showing as John Ellen's. How many properties are they allowed to, how many houses or buildings are they currently allowed to build on a 160-acre section without applying for a subdivision?
Without applying for a subdivision, on each quarter, they could put 2, and the third would be a discretionary use
So technically, right at the moment,
and a garden suite.
okay,
So
so 3 houses and a garden suite
Potentially, yeah.
on each section.
Yes. That's
So,
unsubdivided.
not subdivided. So under our current bylaw, we could easily have 12 dwellings with families of anywhere from 2 to 10 people each in those 12 dwellings on the property that you built, or on the property that you purchased. And that would be within our current development guidelines. So I struggle with how we could deny 10 people at this property, knowing that we can have 11 more dwellings built right around you within our current bylaw. So that's kind of, I guess, where I'm with it currently, is that I understand like wanting to live in the country and have all these amenities of the quiet country, but currently you can have that many neighbors. And there's not really, that's already within the bylaws that we have.
Yes, no, absolutely, and if I can go back, certainly I wasn't implying that you were bound by, well, yeah, actually I will imply that you are bound by the decisions of the Alberta courts. However, I wasn't suggesting that the Alberta courts are at play, at this moment with this. However, knowing their opinion, that they've ruled them as same as hotels, is supporting, I believe, my position. And then also the Revenue Canada piece was also, nobody likes when someone says Revenue Canada, and maybe I shouldn't even have brought it up. However, I think it plays a part as well that many authorities are seeing these strictly as businesses and are being taxed as businesses, and the courts are considering them as a business, similar to a hotel. And on your point about development with residences, with the owners actually living in the residences, I don't necessarily have a concern with that, because with ownership comes certain responsibility. You like I said, I live in Edmonton, and I try my best to get along with my neighbors. That I can throw my dog's ball and hit any one of them at any point in time. So it's always good to have a good relationship with them, and you have that ability if it's someone that's living there full time. You can build that relationship. You can have that that mutual respect and kind of understanding, where you can walk across the street or something like that, or give your neighbor a call and say like, hey, can you keep the gunfire down a little bit or something like, you can kind of have that interaction. In this circumstance, there is no interaction with the guests that are there. And again, I'm not saying that they're horrible people or anything like that, but there are people that are coming there that may not understand certain things. Like, my fence is not, or my property is not fenced. And I don't have livestock on it or anything like that. And I've struggled back and forth, should I put a fence up? There's a significant cost to that fence and things like that. And as a result of this operation, I've put up, I'd hate to say in excess, but I've put up clear notice of no trespassing signs, just to ensure that everyone understands that when you walk across the street, that is private property and things like that. And I really don't want to put a fence up. I don't want to incur that cost, and that. But however, I do fear for the security of my property. When you have a large influx of unknown individuals coming in, and just think of a campsite. Like I understand these people are coming there to enjoy the countryside, which I mean, sure, I get it, right? Much like people camping in a campsite. However, should I be subjected to having a campsite?
Respectfully, are you an Airbnb user yourself?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So for anybody who isn't, Airbnb is something I use a lot. And I've never used this site I don't know the property owners. I'm completely, unbiased.
That's
just so you
preferable.
know. But Airbnb has a built-in system where as a patron, you get a rating, and the place that if I went to their property, I would give their property a rating. They would give me a rating as a tenant. So if you, as a neighbor, ever had an issue with a person that they were renting to, then all you'd have to do is call the landowner, let them know, and say, hey, this person, they can give that person a poor rating, which affects their ability to use Airbnb anywhere else. So, for example, as an Airbnb person, I take my rating very seriously, and I make sure that I treat the property very well. And so that, because it's an anonymous system and they give me a rating before I see the rating they give me, I have to give them theirs. So it's protected in that way. And I did look up their ratings and I read the reviews for the property. And what I'm seeing, the reviews they're a super host, which in the Airbnb world is actually a very high rating. It means that their property is highly regarded. And it also means that when you're looking at it, the review system, and I'm reading through, somebody says, everybody that I read their reviews, basically it's like, the neighborhood's very quiet. I came here to watch the stars. It's incredibly peaceful. I've stayed for 5 weeks. I love the area. We love the area. We love the area. So in regards to your concern about your property being less valued, if anything, in the area that it is, I would suspect that you actually may benefit from some people coming to the area that would fall in love with the property and want to buy yours because they stayed at this neighboring Airbnb and really liked the area. So, not saying that that's the only perspective, but that is most certainly a counter perspective too. And I don't agree that it's only going to be a negative detrimental effect to the value of your property.
Okay. No, and I appreciate your opinion as well.
Well, I'm just gonna stop you.
Yes.
You've said your piece now.
Yeah.
Brenda, can you note that Peter is online now?
Yes.
Any further questions?
I got a couple questions here. I'm going to start with administration. Firstly, if you could clarify, or I guess the difference between a lodging establishment minor and major, and what kind of classification falls in which, in regards to this application, why it was picked for a minor instead of a major.
Well, in this case, the minor was selected because there's no kitchen accommodations. It really could fall under either or, to answer your question. The minor was selected based on the use. The applicant came to us with information, and we had to pick what criteria does it fall within. We had decided it fell within the minor. The differences between them, and I can read them out. So the major, well, I want to just sedate this as well. The major and minor, when we go to our bylaw and we look at the provisions of what we base a major and minor use off of, they're exactly the same. So they fall within the exactly the same provisions. However, the definition is different. And I'll pull that up here for you. So the lodging establishment minor means a commercial or public use of a building or portion thereof where lodging or sleeping accommodation with or without meals is provided exclusively of the occupant and their immediate family, but does not include a restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, drive-in service, a retail establishment, refreshment stand, or other similar services. Based on that definition, we thought this was an accurate definition because they weren't providing any of those other services as part of that. The lodging establishment major is defined as means the provision of rooms or suites in the commercial development for temporary sleeping accommodation and may be equipped with individual kitchen facilities. This use may include accessory food services, neighborhood pubs, nightclubs, meeting rooms, and personal service establishment. This is going more into that commercial use. It wouldn't really be fitting in this instance, so we did not apply this.
No, and thank you for that. Now, my next, just towards a comment here about this being more of a commercial development and fitting more in a commercial land use kind of portion. The only issue with that, and again, as some of you take a look at a lot of Airbnbs, is you're dealing with people's like homes or houses and this type of portion. You wouldn't see a 3-bedroom, 5-bedroom bi-level split in the middle of a large commercial or industrial area. It just wouldn't fit in your land use development or bylaws for that type of structure to be placed in that type of area. Under a commercial, if this was a motel, a hotel, anything more larger scale or anything like that, I agree 100%, that's where it should be. But given the structure and what we're talking about, you wouldn't see this type of development pass in a commercial area. It just, you wouldn't want that next to a large shopping mall or next to something. That's why you have your different zoning. And I just don't believe that we're talking about here, as far as, yes, I understand that, commercially, there are some aspects, they are making money, they are running through it, through the CRA. I've used many Airbnbs across the, BC, Alberta, wherever, when I go traveling. It is, a great way to get into a lot of other communities and be able to experience some of what's out there without, especially if you have a family and you're traveling, instead of trying to squeeze into a smaller area. I have individuals that I know who, and maybe not Airbnb, but same thing, rurally, they had cabins out behind their property and they rented cabins out. And there was still, you still have issues where you have people that aren't respectable when they come out, but you still get that even if somebody's living there with people that might be visiting them or coming out. You can't control everything that comes that way. For me, just again, when we're coming or talking about the land use and where this would fit, I don't believe that a home structure or this type of application for this type of purpose would be, within our land use, would fit within a commercial application.
Hey, Peter,
Sorry, could I just make a point, because I thought I heard you say that a kitchen is not included in this application, when in fact the advertisement does include a full kitchen?
By definition states right here, but does not include a restaurant.
Yes, but I thought, sorry, I may have misunderstood. Also, and very quickly, just please indulge me, one last thing. In this application package, I think it was Economic Development provided a search of Airbnbs within the county. Certainly, a number of them were within Whitecourt, including hotels. This is the only one that they provided in that search within outside of Whitecourt. Some of their searches included properties in different counties. So by that, I would suggest that it is the only one advertised outside of Whitecourt within the county, and therefore there isn't a huge push or desire from property owners to operate these short-term
well,
rentals.
I'm just gonna, we do have another place just outside of Whitecourt here up on the mountain that he's got 80 acres of land and he's built cabins that he rents out on that property.
It may not be advertised as a traditional Airbnb.
They are advertised. I don't know if they're Airbnbs, but one of the residents really complained when we were giving him the permit. And we have not had one complaint on the place since.
Okay, that's good.
So,
So if I could just quick search here, whatever, looking within Airbnb on their website, and it does show a couple on the edge of the county over towards Shining Bank. There is another one here, this is probably the one that we're talking about here also, partway up, and then, I'm not, without going quite big in the map here, just on, this side looks like of Green Court, so I'm not exactly sure, just on the map quick where the boundary is. So, and a whole bunch when you start moving closer within our area between us and Laxington, so there are, outside of Whitecourt, just quick search map, they are there.
Perhaps when I looked at it, they were listed as White Court because in the proximity of White Court. So I apologize if that was not.
okay, Peter?
Yeah, I'm through the chair to the commission board. I think this discussion has been really, really good. I think one of the things that we have to be aware of is when we look at the conditions that have been attached to this development, there's some interesting pieces there that are things that we should be conscious of, because those conditions lay out many of the concerns that the person opposing this has. But those conditions are ones that would be enforced through our bylaw, through the conditions that are there. And I have a bit of a problem with not, if there has been no reports of what's being alleged there, even having that in our decision process, because we would only be able to react to that if there has been a problem in the past, even though that facility has been used and not licensed in this way. The second thing is that I think that we have to discard the fact that a legal opinion that this would be a hotel is when it's a single use and it fits the requirement that has been laid out by our development people as really not fitting into that category. On the flip side, I think that what we need to understand is that if we have these conditions attached to any kind of a development, it is in a rural setting. It definitely has a requirement that there's a respect for the neighbors, not only just the gentleman that's there, but others that are in the area, and that it's the responsibility of the person that's bringing this development permit to us to make sure that those are enforced, and because there's a lot of legal issues that are to that. So, this is, in my view, there's allegations there that I just couldn't verify. The second thing is that the definition, to me, shouldn't be in this discussion because it doesn't fit, even though it may be a judge that thinks that a single rental facility is a hotel. I do have a problem with that. So when we go through this decision-making process, I think that if there's any questions that the commission has, we should possibly, have those questions answered before we make a final decision. And the other part of this is that we have to be cognizant of the fact that we do have these current bylaws that are there and the research that's been done to really nail this down, because I just can't see, personally right now, I just can't see that there is a negative side to this from the view that I have. But I am aware of the fact that if there is, some smoke, there's been some fire, so, that's where I'm at right now.
Any more questions?
Could I just please provide one thing? I did provide the planning authority information on, prior to this, on the occurrences that I found, that I had difficulty with, that was occurring on the property. And also, you know, the crux of what my objection is the value and the intended enjoyment of my property. And what I'd like to ask, what is the test of that would go one way or the other? How could one demonstrate that the value of one's property is negatively affected? What would someone have to prove, or that the enjoyment of their property is negatively affected?
Well, I'm gonna just add something in here. You wanna live someplace where nobody's gonna bother you and everything. You can have a farmer decide to, raise 400 head of cattle across the road and have all that noise and the cattle breaking loose. You could have another neighbor decide to log his place and you'll have loggers all year long. The thing with the rural area is you're not the only one there.
Absolutely.
There is other people there and they have a right to do what they want on their property, just like you do. So we have to take into consideration all the aspects of it. We can't just listen to you and make a decision on what you want.
Absolutely. Understood.
Thanks. Through the chair, I have one other comment to make, and I'd ask maybe if administration could correct me on this if I'm wrong. So, for example, just in regards to the commercial aspect as well, to kind of look at it from there, there's some things that we can't govern from here and can't dictate what people do on their property, and there's some that we can. So, for example, if I went with the example of if Mr. Ellens, that has these 3 sections, had built 3 houses on each of these sections and decided that he had a property management company and he wanted to rent them all out, that would be within his legal right to do that. And the neighbors really wouldn't have anything that they could say or do about it because it would be within his legal right. And they wouldn't be landowners that are living there, they'd just be rentals. They could
Long-term
be,
rentals, yes.
could be, it could be a project coming in. They could be, honestly, if we have a power plant project build, they could be full of workers that are, creating maybe some extra noise or whatever it is, but I mean, what I mean is we wouldn't be able to dictate that. And then basically the fail safe for that and the protection for you as a property owner, for me as a property owner, if one of my neighbors is just disrupting my quality of life, then I have to go through the bylaw process and call a bylaw officer and make a complaint and have that complaint registered.
No, understood. And I get the hypotheticals, which are possible. However, what the matter here today is what's occurring today.
But these are all the test of, you asked about what would be a test of reasonability.
Yes.
So to me, the test of reasonability would be what a person can reasonably build within the guidelines of our current bylaw. So that's the current development plan for that area where you live. And that would be reasonable to have that amount of neighbors with those types of uses.
No, I understand, yes.
Again, kind of a follow-up on kind of what you were commenting there, you're talking about long-term rentals. Just because you have a long-term renter doesn't mean that you have a quality individual in there either.
Absolutely.
I've known people who have personally rented and they've been left with an incredible mess to deal with after the individual's just packed up and fled. So long-term rental doesn't mean that you have somebody quality. My question, I just questioned you if I can. You're talking again around your quality of life and your enjoyment and your what do you consider when you talk about ATV use or you're talking about noises and this stuff? What do you consider excessive? Because what you consider excessive, somebody else might not.
Sure.
Where I live, and again, I'm just gonna use my neighbors as an example, they go out, they shoot, they have a range. There's times where, for me, I mean, they let me know, whatever, we have that relationship that they're going out there, but there's times where for me, it's excessive, it's loud, it is a lot. For them, they're enjoying it, they're having fun, it's not, and the neighbors on the other side of them, it's not an issue for them, they don't, they don't have that concern. So I've always found that noise complaints or, even ATV usage, or they use it if it's not in your property. We've had people in the past who complained that their neighbors are using ATVs, driving up and down the roads or in the ditches, on their property, but again, they feel that that's excessive and they don't like it. So just using that as a metrics, I find it's biased, because one person's opinion and another person's opinion on the exact same situation can be different based off of experiences or kind of what they're looking for. So I'm just, when you're talking about excessive ATV use, what is excessive ATV use?
Yeah, I think I used the term reckless ATV use, but the excessive noise, like certainly, and I think I laid this out in my written submission. I completely understand and have no problem with a property owner, neighbor of mine, enjoying their land. And out in the country, people shoot firearms. I do it myself. I have absolutely no problem with that. The difference here is when you're inviting the public in for compensation and they are shooting firearms. That's where I see a difference. This isn't a neighbor, right, who's bought property, is paying their taxes, enjoying their land. This is a commercial business where individuals are paying, and part of that payment is discharging firearms. That's where I see the difference here. Again, a neighbor enjoying their property as opposed to a business allowing people to essentially, shoot firearms as part of them being there and paying to be there. ATV use, other things as I outlined occurring. And it doesn't happen every day, but it does happen. And, I'm of the opinion that it is interfering, and again, subjective, right? And there's varying levels here, but it is interfering with the intended enjoyment and value of my property.
One more for administration, and we're gonna talk about I'd like to ask on the gun kind of portion, because I know shooting is highly regulated at the federal level, and now we are talking about a 12-acre parcel here. If you have any type of range or any type of sport shooting or, enjoyment-wise on your property, one of the things that you have to be able to do, and this is federally regulated, is, we'll say, be able to control or, we'll say, have some control per se over where your rounds are ending up. Like you can't just blast it across the road into an empty field and hope for the best, or within kind of those parameters. Now, I'm assuming that this place probably isn't set up for, a range per se where you're shooting at a target with a backing or something that to be able to control it, to keep that within your property. But again, I don't know, so.
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, it is. It's shooting straight into the dirt. It's an old silage pit, actually on the private property, not on the acreage, into a dirt bunker.
Okay, and that was gonna be one of my questions, was around trying to regulate to make sure either that happened or no shooting, but if that's already taken care of, so I'll.
Also, that's not a land use.
No, I understand, but I was just saying, as far as the regulation, if it's a safety concern or whatever of the residents, if they're not something to shoot against, and, you're just going in, that maybe it's, something, a discussion.
That would be
but-
something that you would call the
Yeah.
peace officer.
But again, it sounds like it's been addressed by the.
And with the
owner, so-
ATVs along
Yeah.
road, non-land use.
Yeah, again, like I said, that part has been addressed, so thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate both sides of the discussion here today. And it's interesting because these days landowners are faced with trying to have some freedom to do some things with their properties too. And I know in another district, there was kind of a bylaw attack against short-term rentals, and it dumped the property value horrendously and stuck a whole bunch of people with properties. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't in our position. But I can't see anything in here that land use wise and is in the purview of this municipal planning committee that doesn't fit the intended use under the application. And I've heard everything you've said, and I appreciate it. But with that, unless you guys have more to say, I'm gonna go ahead and
Just gonna move it ahead too. So
make a motion that Municipal Planning Commission approve the development permit 15-060-2024 for a lodging establishment minor with the conditions outlined from 1 to 13 in the recommended action.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I would like to hear from the applicants a bit,
Yeah, I
though,
would too.
before we go forward. I'm sorry, but he's
Yes.
put his case forward. I'd like to hear from the applicants for them to put their case forward as well.
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity. If I can I give a copy of my oral statement? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Chair, just 2 comments.
The motion on the floor has to be addressed before you can.
Here's the motion on the floor.
Now, how do we do this?
Well, if you want to go further, I can withdraw it. But
Maybe withdraw it for now, and we'll hear what the applicant has to say, and then you can approve it.
okay, I'll withdraw the motion then.
Go ahead.
Just 2 quick comments. One is, we had considered, like we're cattle farmers, we bought the property, there's a residence on it, we had considered renting it out. Elsie and I, our experience with rent is 50% of the time we had trouble. We've had drug addicts in our former home, and we've also had good renters. The Airbnb has nothing been but good. I imagine you might have an experience otherwise, but it's been really good experience. And then the next one is, I know Tom mentioned he comes from the city. I've always been in the country. I would look forward to being a good neighbor, and going forward. When there's somebody there, like he's not there most of the year. And if I would see somebody breaking in or fire, I would do my part as a neighbor, regardless who's next door. And I would just really like to see us go forward as good neighbors. Those are just 2 comments.
I just want to make one comment before. I've kind of ran into this problem with a business that moved into my area, and the neighbor across the road was totally upset, didn't want him around anymore. And I finally talked to both of them and said, go talk to each other, work it out. And they became good friends after that, and they helped each other. So maybe that's something to look at here.
No, I believe we do have, we've had a relationship in the past. Good, interesting conversations with Richard about, the things that he does out there, and absolutely no disrespect towards them. Nothing intended like that. My entire purpose for this is what I feel is the protection of my property for enjoyment and value. And I wish nothing but the best for them and their family. Absolutely.
And just to let you know on my situation, I did the same thing as you. I bought a piece of property. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's actually just north of Blue Ridge on the north side of the river. Nearest neighbor's a mile away. After about 3 years, they built a motocross track right across the river from me.
Well, that's unfortunate.
And that carries.
Thankfully now, most of them are 4-strokes.
It don't matter, it don't matter. But all I'm gonna say is things happen, things change, and you make the best of it. I could say our property value is decreased, but it hasn't. I have log trucks going right in front of my house 24/7. Doesn't change anything. It's still a piece of heaven for me. So, do you wanna make that motion now?
Same one again?
Now you could have said something that changed somebody's mind.
make the motion that the Municipal Planning Commission approve development permit 15-060-2024 for a lodging establishment minor with the following conditions, 1 through 13, as indicated in the recommended action.
Okay, motion on the floor. Again. Do we have any?
Bruce?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just listening to the conversation here, I see that the applicant actually, I was hoping that that would come because I think that's exactly the ingredients that you need, to have them understand that, the interests of his neighbor is as much, is as important to him as, having his own, interests protected. So I really, I see that responsibility, he's taken on his own shoulders as an applicant to this, and that really, helps me make my decision.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Passed. Thank you very much for both parties coming.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on.
I wish both of you the best.
Thanks very much. Hey, what's the worst? I still have a nice piece of country property.
Exactly.
No, no. Come on, you guys are breaking my heart now.
Aw, good for you.
I was gonna say, you have a couple of very well-behaved little gentlemen.
Take care. Nice seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Can I open this next? Does it have cash in it?
We get to, we want to do,
Yep.
can we do 6.2 next?
Alter the order, because they're here for that one.
That's so nice.
Just have a safe trip home.
Yeah. Safe travels. Safe travels to you.
Okay, we'll do 6.2.
Josh was good this one.
Okay.
That's you guys if you want.
Okay, so this is for subdivision application 2024 sub 08. This file was previously brought to the MPC on October 16th. At that time, we had a few discussions, and the MPC had tabled the application and requested that administration go back and try to obtain more information regarding the condition and to what standard the existing septic system was constructed to. At that time, I think the MPC was trying to gauge whether this would be appropriate to vary the requirement of sewer or not. So I went back, worked with the applicant, Mr. Guy Gauthier. We were not able to get the verification just due to the fact that everything was buried, and it's a substantial financial cost to unbury everything for it to get inspected. However, I did reach out to a few inspectors from Inspections Group, specifically Matt. He specializes in septic installations and inspections. And he did provide me some information on some setback requirements. So we did identify that Mr. Gauthier's system is a direct discharge system. The requirement for provincial building code or septic code is that the discharge point needs to be 90 meters from a property line. We quickly verified that the parcels would be too small to accommodate the existing systems. With that being said, I went back and I looked at the variance provisions within the MGA, and I came up with two options for the MPC's consideration. First, I would like to speak to the variance provisions within the MGA. So the MPC may vary a requirement for water and sewer servicing under the land use bylaw if the test prescribed under section 654 subsection 2 of the MGA is satisfied. Pursuant to this section, pursuant to section 654 subsection 1 of the MGA, the subdivision authority must not approve a subdivision unless it is suitable for the purpose in which the subdivision is intended. Additionally, pursuant to Section 654 subsection 2 of the MGA, the MPC must ensure that the variance does not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use and enjoyment of neighboring parcels of land. I also have another thing to note that under Safety Codes framework, that the MPC must ensure they are not approving development contrary to the provincial safety codes, as the MGA does not trump the requirements of provincial safety codes. So I'm just now going to go speak to the water availability depending on the decision that the MPC makes today. So in accordance with the matters related to subdivision and development regulations 84, 2022 and Woodlands County Design and Construction Standards Guidelines, and pursuant to the Alberta Environment Water Act, a water availability study will not be required, as the CRR district requires either a connection to municipal servicing or a communal water and communal wastewater disposal system or combination. If the MPC wishes to vary this requirement, to permit the existing water wells to service the proposed parcels, so we would need verification that the existing water wells could meet provincial regulations and that their existing septic system could be upgraded to meet provincial standards. So that being said, I do want to note a few other things, particularly under other considerations. If the MPC wishes to vary sewer servicing requirements, the county may be losing a key opportunity to extend municipal servicing to future developments. Additionally, based on prior legal opinions received from Janine Grunberg, the MPC should consider the following prior to making a variance decision. 1, when a municipality extends water and sewer to a subdivision, the expectation is that future development will connect and pay a proportionate charge. Allowing landowners to opt out of these charges may undermine the cost recovery and result in the county's ratepayers subsidizing infrastructure costs in the future. Number 2, the MPC's decision is, if the MPC's decision is challenged, the county would have to compile evidence that the approved subdivision does not negatively impact neighboring parcels as outlined in Section 654, subsection 2 of the MGA. Of course, this would not apply right now. This would apply if a future landowner were to purchase that lot. Number 3, the county may have to consider further variances in the development permit context on the subject lands in the future. And 4, the applicant shall provide proof that the existing systems can meet or be upgraded to meet safety code regimes prior to registration of the subdivision. This may require an engineer. So my personal recommendation, I provided 2 options for the MPC's for their consideration. And I would like to just quickly outline the differences between them. So option 1 is the applicant connects to municipal wastewater and water servicing, which is consistent with the bylaw. Option 2 is a variance that the applicant upgrades their existing septic system to meet provincial safety code regimes and may make use of the existing water wells, provided the applicant can provide evidence the wells can meet provincial regulations and can service an additional residential dwelling on the shop property if it were to be built. That being said, my personal recommendation is that the MPC consider option 1. However, I did provide 2 options. If the MPC decides to vary this requirement, there is option 2 that is set out with conditions that would allow them to keep their existing systems provided they upgrade it, and to keep the existing water wells provided they can get necessary approvals that can service 2 additional homes on the 2 new lots.
I just have a question for clarification to the chair, to administration. So our water and sewer servicing agreement with the town includes the Old Ferry Loop, stuff out at the airport, industrial, and the airport itself. And
Yep.
there's kind of different components.
Yeah, different agreements.
Correct?
Yep.
I know it's Ottawa. Who's
Yep.
that agreement with?
This is the town of Whitecourt. So this agreement would not reflect, if they were to enter agreement for water and sewer requirement, it'd have to be a new agreement. It could not be, they could not hook into one of our existing agreements, because in those agreements, they've specified the precise lands in which are to be serviced. So we'd have to discuss with the town of Whitecourt on what that would look like.
So you're saying that they would actually have to strike a new deal with the town of Whitecourt?
We would on their behalf.
We would on their behalf?
We would, yeah.
But the current water agreement that's in there will
So-
not allow for any other hookups, or isn't with the county, or?
I,
Somebody explain that part to me.
So there was two separate subdivision approvals that happened. One was Deer Park Estates, and then the other was Sacktowa. And at each time, there was two different servicing agreements based on subdivision, whatever the subdivision number was at the time for Sacktowa, they did an agreement for that. And then when Deer Park Estates came in, they did a separate agreement for that. And those lands are all to the other side of the road, and the lands that aren't, this parcel is not on those subject lands, so there would have to be a new agreement
Okay,
based on this subdivision approval.
who's the agreement? Is the county's name on those water agreements?
yes.
So
The
the county.
developer, the county, and Whitecourt. So the developer, so in the case of like, say, Sacktowa was on there, the town of Whitecourt, and Woodlands County.
And those developments under the lands are developed out? There's no more room for expansion in those properties?
Well, while the existing lines, right now, they don't actually connect to this parcel. So
No,
to build off of the existing systems, yes, you could. But the
Are you
infrastructure
saying-
right there doesn't exist right now.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, all of the lands that are in those areas are 100% built out now? There's no, what you're telling me is, and this is why this is such a mess, is this water agreement with the town. Because you've got Sagatawa Estates, and then you've got Deer Park, and then you've got the airport, and they're all under separate agreements.
Yes.
These are by the developers, driven by the developers, right?
Yes.
So what I'm asking is all the land under that water agreement for, Sagatawa or any of those other ones, is all that land 100% developed and all those water connections are used?
They're all used.
So
right
we're
now.
never gonna run into this again. Like, we won't, a water agreement for a municipality with another municipality should be one document.
I understand.
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where, so we're gonna require them to hook up to town water and sewer. But we're gonna have to strike a new agreement on that whole deal. Is that correct?
It'll be three parties that'll have to strike agreement, yes. Because, and the reason why we have to be,
Servicing area than one,
Oh,
that's the reason we have a half-inch water line going to the bomber base up there that can't be used, because nobody looked at this as a holistic approach. So if there's gonna be further development in these lands, I'm trying to figure out where we're putting these residents by forcing them to hook up.
so the way it's laid out in the bylaw, I'm just staying consistent with our regulations. That's why I provided two options. If that is not a requirement that the MPC wants to go with, you can absolutely vary it. That's in your right to vary that. However, the reason why there's multiple agreements is because their specifications have changed over time. So we have to meet different specifications depending on the year, and the town of Whitecourt determines that, unfortunately. Number two is we have to be a part of those agreements because we're the ones that enforce the installation, right? So if they are to construct a water line to Whitecourt standards, we have to verify that it is in fact meeting Whitecourt standards. Whitecourt is not going to do that on our behalf. They'll provide what their requirements are, and it'd be up to the developer to construct to that standard, and we would make the verification that it was built to Whitecourt standards.
I'm not sure, maybe kind of what John was saying, but that Sagatawa Estates, are we able to expand from their route, or is this gonna be a new line that they wanna run?
No, it'll be an expansion from the existing system.
Next part on that, because we also have, there are a lot of incredibly high off-site levies that we end up paying in different areas for the water and sewer hookups for new individuals. Do we have any idea what those off-site levies for this are gonna look like?
54,000 per hectare times two. It's quite expensive.
It's just a permit, right? It's just a permit? Not
That's
installation.
an off-site levy from the town of Whitecourt.
Right.
That's what they
Peter.
charge.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit more confused here because, you know, maybe, I don't quite understand the legal direction that Janine is giving us here because, I can't see where, right now, it's our responsibility as an MPC to decide whether or not the developer wants to expand his existing system or whether he wants to hook up to the other system, to the municipal system if it's not there. Like I'm really confused as to why this conversation is even at this point, because again, I agree with Councilor Burrows. This is just opening another can of worms. I think for me, I'd have to understand this a lot better before I could make a decision.
I'm just gonna make one statement before. Somebody would have to run about a mile of water line and sewer line to their property. They could drill 2 new wells and put 2 new sewer systems in cheaper than what it's gonna cost to run that water line.
No, and I understand.
So like, tying into the town, to me, is a moot point. It's, why even bring it up?
Because
it's
that is
the bylaw
that
says.
is the bylaw that was adopted by council that we have to follow. So if we don't follow the bylaw, administration is not following the rules that council's laid out for us. We could do whatever we want. So that's why I provided 2 options. There is a variance option. It's not for me to decide. I understand there might be some contention, but the reason I brought 2 options is for you to make that decision. Because say in the future, some developer comes and then we have not extended this system to a point where another developer now can tie in. We've lost all opportunity to tie into this system. We can't have that decision be on administration. It has to be on the MPCs. For that reason, there's 2 options.
Yeah, and again, to that point around the developer and stuff, given that this property, not to say it's gonna happen, but say along the line of the town bypass, if they decide to go that route. Say we go with option 1, and it's a gross amount of capital investment for them to put into it to do this. And let's say next year the province comes out and says, hey, we're gonna do this bypass. I mean, realistically, running the town, the water, the sewer, everything up there, for them, it's gonna be a really bad financial pitfall because a lot of that money they're not gonna recover based off of the property and any subdivision or expenses and stuff to tie into that at that point are gonna be done. And I think whether it's the applicants in front of us or any individuals down the road, say somebody else buys it and they look at doing something or developing, I think are gonna be in that same position where, if the province does do this bypass, and again, I don't see it foreseeably happening anytime soon, but it's just one of those things, like, tying into something else and the capital that's gonna go into that, in my opinion, is just a bad investment. So, and I don't see any other developer thinking, any differently than that.
Just for argument's sake, I just had a question. Do we know where you said it's a closed system? If there's lift station capacity, like, is there capacity basically to tie into the system?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got that confirmation from the town of Whitecourt.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Just for my own understanding, the bylaw specifically that says you've got to tie in, but we're a long way away from having a tie-in available for them. What's that bylaw number? Because I want to read it.
Yeah, it's our land use bylaw 490/17. So in there are 2 options. One of which I didn't go into giving 3 options.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just hang on. So you're telling me that our land use bylaw would tell you to run a mile of water and sewer?
Yep.
Currently?
Currently.
Based on that zone, yeah.
Yes.
The zoning, right, that's where I'm screwing this up.
Yep,
Okay, thank
yep.
you. And is there more developable land that's there that somebody could subdivide, or is there a reason for running this service?
On the existing quarter, no. It would be eastern quarter. It would be setting up that one for potential development. So in the land use bylaw, sorry, I want to backtrack a little bit, Councillor Burrows. To backtrack a little bit, in the bylaw, it does give two options. It gives municipal wastewater and sewer or a communal wastewater system and it's like a shared packaging system. I don't remember the wording off the top of my head. I didn't even bother giving that as an option because what's the point of varying that and making him now upgrade, Mr. Guy Gauthier, upgrade the water and the sewer when we might be able to use the existing wells? That's why in this case, I've said, well, if you're gonna vary one, you might as well vary both, because I could only see the MPC varying this as a cost incentive, right, to make it cheaper for the applicant. That's why I've only given option 1 and 2. I didn't go with the communal system because that's a whole cost in itself, that there's really not gonna be any cost savings.
Somebody else want to speak here?
Well, I know you use the term subdivision, but we're severing a property into two. Where the shop is located, we have a sewer and well, and it's not going to be something that we're going to move in or build to. That is what we decided that we're going to use just for our own storage. And we bought this property, we come from Ontario, in good faith. We're both retired. So as everyone knows, when you're on a retirement income, your funds are limited. So therefore, putting the cost of bringing water and sewer into the property where there's already a grandfathered in good system that is running, that has never caused a problem, we've been there now 3 years, enjoyed the community and the property. Beyond our realization, we did go through lawyers and real estate that never divulged or disclosed that there was a bypass proposal project going through the property. Was told, and I'm just going to be very honest with the council here, that we did go to RECA, the Real Estate Board of Alberta, and because it wasn't on title, that it was okay that they didn't have to disclose it. Now, coming from Ontario, it's a different rules. I worked for a real estate company for many years, and that would not have happened. Someone didn't do their due diligence, but beyond that, I'm saying here we are with a property that we have enjoyed the property and the community, but our funds are tied. So if we wanted to sell the property in good faith, we legally don't have to disclose that, but I wouldn't, as a good Samaritan of this community, not be able to tell the new owners that. So we're thinking, how can we do this? We've talked to the Ministry of Transportation, Guy has, for 3 years. Well, 3 years now, 2.5 years, once we found out. So we come to the council with our hands tied. What do we do with this property? We've gone to the ministry, we asked them to either going to purchase the property, is this project going to go? We've done over 2.5 years with them, in good communications with them. And Jeff Smith has been very honest and open. They don't have the money to buy the property.
But they want to buy it.
But they do want to buy it at some point.
They want to buy it now, we have no money.
Right.
So for years now.
Sorry, who's Jeff Smith?
He is.
Acquisitions for Alberta Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
So we thought, what are we going to do at this point? We want to move on as every retired couple, move and do some traveling. And we had come into this community and we looked at the house and we thought, yes, it needs some improvements, some interior improvements. So we put our life savings into this home. We want to do some upgrades and then put it back on the market and sell it. As you know, be here maybe 5-6 years, maybe a little bit more, and then do those, because we saw the financial gains to this property. But now there isn't. So we're here thinking, I'm gonna let you take the floor.
Well, I'll just say we were going to do some big renovations there, but there was a bypass proposal right through the house and the shop. Why would you?
Spend money on
Just
it.
throwing money out the window, so our plans are out the window. Our enjoyment's gone out of the place, we're not what we planned. If we hadn't known this, we never would have bought this place. But it was not disclosed. RECA's fine with that. We went there twice and complained with the realtor, but they said, it's not on title, so you don't have to disclose that. But it would never be on title. It'd be government property, they don't put titles on there.
So,
Right? It would never be a title.
And in the conversation, the guy, just gonna cut in, excuse me, but Jeff did say, a guy had asked the question, why wasn't, because there was a caveat on this property. They took it, because the property was
28.
28 acres. And they had put a whole caveat, the Ministry of Transportation in 2011, they took it off.
Well,
When
they sold, the previous owner sold 20 acres off, it
Yes.
was 28 acres, now it's 8. So they want the whole property, for some reason they bought part of it, not all of it, but they do require all of it for their bypass.
Right.
So why they did it the way they did, I guess they couldn't agree on the price, is what I'm told. So here we are today with a can of worms, you know? And they're saying they're trying to rectify that so that won't happen again. That's what
But it's a little too late.
AT's saying now, right? Yeah, it doesn't help us.
No, so we're sitting here, as I said, what are we going to do with this property? So we figured if we subsection it, sever it, sell that parcel, because it's a smaller parcel, hopefully we can, we're not sure, and then move forward,
Well, we're not sure we can sell it at all.
yeah.
You know, we wouldn't have bought it ourselves if we had known this. And we find most of the town knows this. Right, we're from Ontario, so we wouldn't know this. We were told actually there was no bypass on this by the realtor. He
Yes,
stood in the front driver and told us it's over there somewhere, not here.
that's,
You know?
yeah.
So
So,
that's where we're at. So we're just thinking if we sever it, we could maybe sell it a little easier, because it's a smaller, purchase. And we'd like to keep the shop and sell the house. That's the plan today anyway. But currently, there's two existing septic systems and 2 existing drilled wells, which work fine. We've always said existing, they've been there for 40 years. And there's nothing, Joshua was there, he's seen them. They discharge into the forest behind, which is our property. You can't smell sewage, you can't see sewage, it's not even wet back there. Right?
And Guy,
It's,
just to interrupt, Guy is a certified from Ontario septic installer and designer. So, talking, he has the experience.
yeah, from what I see, that's out there, no, there's nothing wrong with it, works fine, as it should.
So administration, why would we go forward and want to tie into it if in the future that,
Because it's not
That's-
guaranteed.
sorry?
It's not guaranteed. Based on this, well, it's a plan right now.
I know, that plan, to be honest with you, I probably heard 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been on the books forever,
70s.
right?
This
Like,
is 70s.
yeah, so I mean, but I mean, still, with the $108,000 investment, I think if I got that right, you said 54 times 2?
Yeah, it's per hectare. There's a calculation that they apply to
That's
it.
just
Yeah,
the fees though, right?
Yeah, it's
That's
a
not the
levy.
installation.
Okay, so,
Offsite levy.
Yeah.
so the minimum of that, would we want to put that capital into something that, if their system is currently working fine for them?
Right.
Why would we want to?
Well, it'll be a bypass one day.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
They
why
don't
would we want to put that money
Not
in?
want to see a sewer water main in the road there. They're gonna move the road a bit, right?
Yeah.
It's all have to be ripped out again if they do this.
Hey, Dave?
Okay, just one quick question here. Just under the option 2.
Yep.
With the existing sewer and well that are on there, I know we just trying to kind of read this and make sense. We make a comment or making sure that it meets the provincial safety standards at that point. What type of upgrades would be required of the applicants to be able to continue meeting the provincial safety codes?
Well, I can speak in general terms. I need to be,
And that's fair enough, because I know as somebody who, I did a lot of major upgrades on my property, and by doing the major upgrades, they said, well, you're adding this, you have to change your septic system, you have a bigger tank, you have to do this, you have to do this. They wouldn't have permitted the rest of the property, my redevelopment of my place, like there was already a current house, we were just going bigger. And I'm just curious, and it's not a cheap expense by any means, I'm saying, but I wanna know from the safety standards, as far as upgrades and stuff, are they gonna have to change what is there? And if they have to, in general terms, what are we talking about?
So conversation with the septic inspectors, there's gonna be one of 2 options. It's gonna be upgrading to a mound system, which would possibly bring them into that setbacks. I can't confirm that because I'm not a professional in that area. Or the other system is a holding tank. And what those upgrades entail, I don't know. The existing system will have to be inspected. If there's something there that the inspector sees that needs to be upgraded, like say the tank, for example, and then the mound needs to go in, that might be required. But right now, in general terms, the existing system will likely, based on the measurements, it won't work. It'll have to be a mound or a holding tank. And that will be, I've left it open for the inspector to determine. I don't want to determine that because say if there's one or the other one's cheaper, they can make that decision as the landowner on which one's.
I get that. We're not the inspecting authority. We don't run that, but I just wanted to see, what the implications are of.
I understand the code if you want to know what my version of that would be. It's well, you wouldn't want a holding tank. They told me, I talked to an inspector. He said you can cap off a septic tank called a holding tank. That's one option. That's very cheap. But no one wants that. You're gonna have to pump or truck your sewage away. It's a big expense that over the long haul, right? So nobody, that would hurt your resale big time. So the other option is a conventional bed, which is not a mound system. That's a raised bed. We're all sand there, is my understanding, so it goes right in the ground. Be a conventional system, disposal bed off the tank. We have lots of room for that, but I mean, what I'm saying is what's existing there now works properly. There's no smell, no odor, you don't see it. A failed system is when you see or smell sewage. That's when you know it failed. We have none of that, the way it is right now.
So
It's
if
not
we
affecting
go-
the other lot at all.
If we go with option 2,
Yep.
the ball is in their court. We just approve it, subject to provincial inspections.
It's up to the landowner to bring their property into compliance, and we will
Why are
require
we going through all
verification.
this? They're the landowner, they're coming to us, we want a permit. We will bring it up to provincial standards. We give them a permit. Why are we going through all this with town water and everything else? It makes no sense to me.
Well, in short, it's because that's what the bylaw says. I won't give a recommendation outside of the bylaw. I can give a variance provision that won't come with my opinion, because that's the risk that the county needs to take, not me personally. So that's why I've given the two options. By the way, I think I understand where all of you are coming from, and I agree with you. But just from my professional opinion, I have to take my feelings out of this. And what do I think is best for the county going forward in the future? I'm looking at countywide and building up infrastructure and looking at how can we minimize our taxpayers subsidizing future infrastructure. That's where my opinion comes in. You do not have to go with my opinion. That's why I provided option 2 for if they can upgrade their existing system and they can do the tests on their wells to make sure that can service a house. They can absolutely do that. I've checked that option. It can be achieved. There would be little legal ramifications if it were to be approved under variance. That's why I've provided that option. So I have done my due diligence to ensure that if we approve it under option 2, that these conditions are protecting the county as well as the landowner. I also want to note that if the landowner keeps their existing system with no upgrade, we can't approve that legally. If we do, we better be completely prepared to pay. Say in the future, someone buys a property and sewer starts migrating. I'm not saying that's happening right now. The systems look good right now. But in the future, that landowner could seek damages, and we would have to pay that because we made the decision approving it. So that being said, I just wanted to raise these few thoughts, but yeah, it's completely the MPC's decision. Both of these conditions I have drafted, and I have 100% confidence in either one of them. That's up to the MPC to make that decision.
You were first.
Oh, actually, I'm just prepared to go ahead and make the motion that we accept our FD subdivision application 2024 sub 08 with option 2 and the conditions as presented.
That's what you can do anyways.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Call the question, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just, before you'll get a permit, you will have to come back to our planning with your systems approved.
They'll do all the inspections through that process, right? If you contact either inspections group or Superior Safety, they'll be able to go out there, tell you what you need, and then when it's upgraded, and then they'll just basically sign off on it. We've gotten them before, just sign off saying it meets building code, and they'll put the specification of the building code requirement. We'll put that in the file, and provided all that's received, we will endorse the subdivision.
No, it has to be on the house also? House and the shop? We have two systems now, right?
Two systems.
Two existing
Yeah.
systems, separate systems.
Yeah.
No, the shop's just got one washer and one sink in there, one toilet, one sink, that's all it's in the shop. It's a whole system for itself, just for that.
Long
And it's
as
very
someone could
limited.
develop on there, right?
Pardon?
People want to develop on there, not just have a shop.
If someone develops and puts a house on that same lot, they have to apply with a new septic system permit then, at that time. It's designed to fit, to suit the home, based on the daily flow of the home. So it doesn't, the system that's there now would never accommodate a home also. You have to apply for a brand new system when you do, before you build.
But dividing the property, we've also changed the geometrics of where the property lines are and the setbacks for where the systems are. So it does, they're still existing systems on there, but if you move the property line, they might not meet provincial setbacks, they may not meet, and that's part of the issue. But unfortunately, we don't have that information here, and they'd be able to tell you what you need to do in that end.
See, the shop was on 28 acres at one time, I didn't know. Now, Alberta, they bought 20 acres off the back of the shop. So they bought the 20 acres that where the system did dispose onto. They were fine with it. They didn't want anything. And they severed that property. They knew it was there. Didn't require anything, any distances. They didn't care. Why would they care now?
Well, probably another way you could get around it, if, not saying you should do it or not, is
You don't say it on camera.
Cameras on, Bruce, cameras on.
delete the well and the septic tank on the garage part, so it doesn't, they're not usable anymore, and then you don't have to.
We can cap off the well and it's called a septic holding tank. That's one option apparently. It's a bad option if you ask me. And the home, see, like you said, you developed a property, a home,
Yeah.
added on or whatever, renovated. So that's when you need to redo your septic and also to accommodate the new, design of the new home.
I had to-
Bedroom, square
yeah, I had to
footage, that makes your
Okay.
system bigger, right? Now, we haven't touched the house. It has no change to that, right?
Yeah.
The daily flow's the same. It works fine. Right now, the well's working fine also, so.
And like I said,
None of that's a
my-
problem today.
My system before worked fine too. I've got enough land and all those to pump out and whatever anyways, but just because we upgraded the trailer that was on there and went to something a little bit bigger, I had to dig everything out and put it in a bigger tank and bigger holding capacity.
Mhm.
Still ties into my pump out, still everything else, but they wouldn't permit it with the existing tank.
For your building permit.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get a building permit, you need a septic permit first. That's how that works, right?
I had my building permit and to get the different permits that I went through. I did the electrical, whatever that came after, there were multiple permits I had to get.
Okay, well, Terry, you need a septic permit first, then you get a building permit.
Yeah, I had my building permit first, and then the electrical, and then the septic.
No different than.
We should get moving here.
Yeah.
Sorry you guys have had that negative experience, it's not
Yeah.
fair.
What's that?
So am I.
Sorry you've had that negative
It
experience.
hasn't been
That
good, very
just isn't-
stressful.
Just isn't fair.
Well,
And
hope-
at our retirement age, we don't need more stress than we already have in life, right? But it is what it is. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time and listening to our
Hopefully this helps
concerns.
you
and-
along.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your work explaining that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
No problem.
So, can I just ask administration something? So with the reason you gave the options was because your hands were tied on the one because of council. So what do we need to, do we have to address that with council going forward, or?
The land use bylaw, there's a
Is it-
lot in there that needs to be revised.
Oh,
Like, I'm gonna be
well-
completely honest with you,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we're working
good
to
night.
do
Thank
is,
Thank you.
thank you.
Merry
Take care.
Christmas.
We're working to change some of that, right, in
Yeah.
the new bylaw, because we recognize that a lot of it is like hogwash. The issue is that as administration, we have to follow that document, because it was established by council. If we ever get, if a decision that the MPC makes is ever brought to the Development Appeal Board or Subdivision Appeal Board, and we made a decision that has no backing in the bylaw, we're paying for it legally. So
And I'm-
that's why when we make recommendations, we try to do our due diligence. Like from purely, if you take the opinion out of it, like what you feel for someone. Hooking up to municipal wastewater and sewer system is probably what's best for the county. It's not what's best for the applicant. I completely understand that, and that's why I gave the variance option. And when I gave the variance option, I just made sure that that variance was consistent with provincial code, because the last thing I want is the MPC approving something that's not.
Yeah.
And again, it's not, right now, it's fine. His two systems are fine, but if someone buys that and has an issue with that system, and it's like the sewer starts migrating. First of all, the water well is too close to the sewer system. I can pretty much say with confidence they weren't built to code based on the measurements I've done. And then the existing sewer systems are way too close to the existing property lines. Now, the question is, well, how come Alberta Transportation approved that? Well, they have different legislation than we do. They can do that and have no legal ramifications. We cannot, so.
I just want to make sure going forward that council's being addressed with the issue that you're facing.
Well,
Yes.
Your hands are
just to
tied.
add to that, the country residential restricted is only utilized in that quarter section, then one other quarter section where they're supposed to use holding tanks only. So it's
It's really not a big deal in the future.
there's only 2 examples of where that zone exists. So it just happens that that little chunk of it is on there.
Okay.
And I
Thank
went
you.
through I actually went and had conversation with the applicant if they wanted to go through that process, and they did not.
Okay.
So that's why it came to this.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yep.
Next. Okay. The proposed subdivision application is to create one agriculture holding of 80 acres and one residential parcel of 10 acres from a 160 acre parcel on southeast 1961A west of the 5th from an A2 parcel, and includes the extension of Township Road 613 through southwest 1961-18 west of the 5th to access the south side of the southeast quarter. I have some copies here of the application form that was not included. That's my apologies for that. But it's just another form signed by that quarter section's landowner, if anybody wants to see it. Just to approve that they're giving up that portion of road to the county, and creating their lot into 2 parts, which they did sign, and they're not in attendance to speak to this, but they didn't really have any objections. They were dealing with the applicant themselves when last I heard. Back to my RFD. It is zoned A2, and that would bring the parcel density on the quarter to 3 parcels, I should say, not 2. Every proposed subdivision must have legal access, so infrastructure's comments were that the proponents must upgrade the existing driveway to county standards. So I'm thinking this driveway would be the road utilized on the southeast quarter there, and the resulting road and right-of-way to be transferred to Woodlands County. New road to have turnaround included at the end of the road, and all cost of the work to be borne by the proponents. Once accepted, maintenance will be under the county. The proposed accesses will be borne by the proponents, and infrastructure recommends not extending the township 613, as it could create issues with cutting one parcel into 2 by the county roads, but that landowner did sign off on it, so just wanted to add that. There are multiple systems existing on the proposed parcel and the remainder that will require septic inspections, just like that last application, to meet provincially accredited agency. There is no soil classification. Soil classification testing is required on the 10-acre parcel. Water table testing is required as the parcel is 10 acres in size, but a stormwater management plan is not required. Water availability study is not required as the density is not over 5 parcels per quarter section. No inquiries or letters of concern have been received to date, as all adjacent landowners have received notice, and no objections from any of the referred agencies. Forestry and Parks Land Delivery has no concerns with the attached application. They would like it noted that Alberta Wetland Inventory indicates that the majority of the remaining treat area has the potential for wetlands, if there is future clearing, an assessment as per Alberta wetland policy may be required, and that could be addressed through the development permit process, but the new parcel isn't in that treat area, so it wasn't of my concern. No concerns from Alberta Transportation. Their full comments are attached, and municipal reserves are not required for the first parcel out, however, will be required for that second residential parcel. It is my recommendation that the Municipal Planning Commission consider approval for subdivision 2024 sub 10 in consideration for the following reasons. And would you like me to read those reasons?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm done.
Any questions?
I'm good, no problem.
Do you have a question?
I do, I just have a question. So I'm just a little confuzzled on this, on the access. So there's proposed access from two different directions, is that right?
So the proposed access to the 1 10-acre residential parcel is on that Range Road 65, I believe it is. So that would be the new access, and then the other access, because that road right away, Range Road 65, once you get farther south from that point, it's like quite wet, and there might even be a creek, I think. So extending that road would be much more costly than extending that road. So that's kind of why I believe the applicant approached that southwest quarter section owner to extend that road. There are two owners on that subdivision, both brothers, and in order for the one brother to sign off on it, he wanted his own access. So that's why there's
Oh, he wants his own. The reason that I'm asking is because I know we've got a few developments out there with a single right-of-way that splits into a pair of driveways. And I'm looking at this from a long-term planning standpoint. If it's gonna cost us, what was that number? $11 million to replace every culvert in the county, why are we doubling them up? Do you know what I mean?
Well, every parcel would need to have their own access.
Well, that's my point.
Oh.
Is every time you subdivide and now you're making another access, you've got another culvert, then that gets transferred to the county.
Mhm.
And the county now has to rebuild them, maintain them. Every 40 years, we dig them up, put another culvert in. It's maybe something that MPC wants to look at, because you said every parcel needs its own access now.
Correct.
Under the new, so we're adding to it, do you know what I mean? We're adding to our culvert and our municipal infrastructure. If you've got individuals that are willing to share, which in this case you don't, but I was just looking at that as a joint.
Just from I believe, like, I haven't had any circumstance since I've been at the county. Every parcel has required their own access, just because I think there's been numerous circumstances where the shared access, it requires registration on title, people sell, and then they don't want that person to have that access anymore, and that's out of the county control. So when we get legal access for emergency service purposes, for everything, each lot created that has a residence has their own access, and then it resolves a lot of the future problems that landowners would have to deal with, because it doesn't necessarily, the subdivision approval doesn't run with the future landowners who would purchase it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And just for a follow-up to that, just making sure, looking at the map here, Township Road 613 that goes to the one driveway, all they're looking at doing is extending that to the next property line?
Per infrastructure's comments, it would be requiring that road to make sure that that road is built to county standards.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that at this point it is. And then if there's current upgrades that need to be required to that in terms of the current standards, whatever they are now, that would be what would need to be entailed. And then a turnaround, which is per their standards, and then the approach. So there would be costs associated, large costs, but less costs than extending that range road all the way down to the south side of the
I'll
corner.
accept the motion.
I'll make a motion that the MPC approve subdivision application number 2024 sub 10 in consideration with the listed reasons.
Any questions on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Pass. Okay, that puts us down to information items. Anybody want to see them?
I was just prepared to make a motion that we accept the information items as presented.
Any questions on that? If not, call the question, all in favor? Passed. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, next meeting.
Oh, yeah. Next meeting is January 15th.
4 PM, there's a council meeting at 5, so there's currently 2 items.
It's gonna be tight.
I'd have to have a record meeting.
Just don't bring us any of these contentious subdivisions.
Go ahead,
I make a motion to adjourn.
we're done.
Thanks, Peter.